This trail leads to the edge of a lake so large that the far shore drops below the horizon. Mille Lacs is Minnesota's second largest lake, more than 200 square miles of open water, and one of the most famous walleye fisheries in North America. On its southeast corner sits a small state park hiding three surprises. A quarter-mile of natural sand beach on a shoreline known mostly for rock, a view of the smallest national wildlife refuge in the United States, and the name of a wandering priest who saw this country in 1680 and told the whole world about it, more or less truthfully. This is Father Hennepin State Park, and this is the story of the Big Lake's quiet corner. We are in central Minnesota, about 100 miles north of Minneapolis, on the southeast shore of Mille Lacs Lake. The park sits right beside the little town of Isle, in Mille Lacs County, and covers about 344 acres of hardwood forest and lakeshore. It is one of two state parks on this lake, and the smaller and quieter of the pair. Today's walk is a July afternoon loop of about 3 miles, on flat trails that thread between the campgrounds, the woods, and the water. Almost every step of it stays within earshot of waves. The walking here is easy and generous. The park's trails are flat, a mix of packed dirt, gravel, and a paved shoreline path, and the signature route is a 2-mile hiking club loop that swings through the woods and along the lake. Interpretive signs stand beside the trail, and in spring the forest floor fills with wildflowers. The forest itself is northern hardwood, thick with maple and birch and basswood, and in mid-July it closes overhead like a green roof. It is the kind of trail you walk slowly, because the lake keeps flashing between the trunks. Mille Lacs is a gift of the last ice age. As the great glaciers of the late Pleistocene melted back, a ridge of dumped rock and gravel called a moraine blocked the drainage, and meltwater pooled behind it into an enormous shallow basin. The lake we see today is that trapped meltwater, still sitting in its bowl of glacial debris. Around the shore, deposits of granite, silt, and gravel mark old beach lines from a time when the water stood even higher. The ice also explains what is under your boots here, because nearly everything in this landscape, from the sand to the stones, was carried in and left behind by glaciers. And then the trees open, and there it is. The first sight of Mille Lacs stops most people mid-stride, because it does not look like a lake so much as an inland sea. The water runs flat and silver all the way to a horizon with nothing on it. On a calm July day, the lake breathes in long, slow swells, and on a windy day it builds real whitecaps that pound this shore like surf. Every trail in this park eventually delivers you to this view, and it never gets smaller. The numbers deserve a moment. Mille Lacs covers about 132,000 acres, roughly 207 square miles, which makes it Minnesota's second largest lake, behind only Red Lake. Yet for all that size, it is remarkably shallow, mostly 20 to 30 feet deep, with a maximum depth of only about 42 feet. That shallowness is the secret of its character. Wind stirs the whole water column. Sunlight reaches the gravel and rock below, and the lake becomes a vast, sun-warmed engine for growing fish. The prettiest walk in the park is the Pope's Point Trail, a flat gravel path that follows the shoreline for about half a mile to an overlook at the tip of Pope's Point. The lake stays at your shoulder the whole way, and the point itself reaches out into the water like the prow of a ship. From the overlook, you can look back along the curve of the park's beaches, or straight out across miles of open water. Watch the air above the lake here, because rare terns often patrol this stretch of shore. It is the best seat in the house for the big lake's moods. The name Mille is French, and it means 1,000 lakes. French traders and mapmakers applied it to this whole lake country in the 1700s, and the biggest water in the region ended up wearing the name of all of them. The lake carried older and better names first. In the Ojibwe language, it is called Masai Zaga Igen, the Grand Lake, and the Dakota name for it, Bde Wacken, means spiritual or mystic lake. Grand, spiritual, and 1,000 lakes rolled into one, which is not a bad summary of the view from this shore. Ahead, the shoreline turns pale, and the trail delivers its biggest surprise. A real sand beach, wide and soft and bright, curving along the bay with the whole lake spread out behind it. On a hot July weekend, there are families in the shallows, towels on the sand, and kids testing the water that stays shallow a long way out. The State Park Service calls this the best designated swimming beach on all of Mille. It feels borrowed from somewhere else entirely. This beach is a geological outlier because most of the Mille shoreline is rock, cobble, and gravel, not sand. Here at the southeast corner, the glacial deposits sorted out finer, leaving a natural sand strand about a quarter-mile long. The stony stretches nearby have their own reward because the same glaciers that built this lake dragged Lake Superior agates south and scattered them through the gravel of central Minnesota. That banded red and orange stone has been Minnesota's official state gemstone since 1969. Beachcombers here walk slowly with their heads down, checking the wet stones after every wave. Ask any Minnesota angler about Mille and you will hear one word: walleye. This shallow, windswept lake, with its endless gravel and rock bottom, is prime spawning ground, and it produces billions of walleye eggs and fry every year. The lake also grows northern pike, smallmouth bass, and muskie of serious size, and its fishing regulations are watched and argued over like few waters anywhere. The park puts you right into that story, with 2 fishing piers reaching out from its shore. People drive hundreds of miles to cast into this water. A paved path runs along the water here, linking the beach, the picnic grounds, the fishing piers, and the boat access. It is the park's front porch. Anglers walk out on the piers with buckets and rods, boats slide out toward the walleye grounds, and everyone else just drifts along the shoreline looking at the water. On summer evenings, this stretch fills with campers coming down to watch the light change over the lake. The lake does all the entertaining. Now for the name over the gate. Louis Hennepin was born in 1626 in the town of Ath, in what is now Belgium, and he became a Recollect Franciscan friar with an incurable case of wanderlust. He crossed the Atlantic to New France, the French colony along the St. Lawrence, as a missionary priest. But what Hennepin really wanted was to see the unmapped interior of the continent. In 1679, he got his chance, and it would carry him within a few miles of the ground this park stands on. Hennepin joined the explorer La Salle's expedition of 1679, pushing west through the Great Lakes into country no European had described. Along the way, he became one of the first Europeans to write an account of Niagara Falls, and his description helped make that waterfall famous across Europe. From the Illinois country, Hennepin was sent ahead with 2 companions to explore the upper Mississippi River. 3 men in a canoe, on a river whose length and course were still a mystery to the map makers of Paris. They paddled north into the unknown. The inland trails pull you into the deep shade of the hardwoods, where the lake becomes a brightness glimpsed between trunks. Ruffed grouse drum in these woods, squirrels and chipmunks work the forest floor, and white-tailed deer step across the trail at dawn and dusk. It is a small forest, but an old-fashioned one, quiet and green and full of small movement. Walking it, you are seeing roughly what the lake country looked like when 3 Frenchmen in a canoe first came this way. In the spring of 1680 on the Mississippi, Hennepin and his companions Mitchell Occult and Antlin Augel met a large Dakota war party, and the 3 were taken north with them into the Mille country, the homeland of the Mdewakanton Dakota. By the historical accounts, Hennepin was held only about 15 miles from where this park now stands. He spent roughly 8 months living with his hosts, and he filled his journal with the lakes, the rivers, and the daily life he witnessed. He was the first person to write extensively about the Mille region. Whatever else Hennepin was, he was paying attention. During those months, Hennepin traveled widely, and on the Mississippi he was shown the river's only true waterfall, a broad curtain of water thundering over a limestone ledge. He named it the Falls of St. Anthony, after his patron saint, and that name stuck. A century and a half later, mills crowded around that waterfall would grind out the city of Minneapolis. In September of 1680, the French trader Daniel Greysolon, Sieur du Lut, arrived in the region and negotiated the release of the 3 travelers. Hennepin turned east, toward France, carrying a notebook full of wonders. The hiking club loop bends past marshy lowlands along the lake margin, where the park turns soft and wet. These marshes are working habitat, hunting grounds for mink and raccoon, nurseries for waterfowl and building sites for beaver. Ospreys and bald eagles cruise the shoreline beyond, scanning the shallows for fish. The mix is the point, beach, marsh, forest, and big water all packed into a few hundred acres. Small park, complete kit. Back in France, Hennepin published his description de la Louisiane in 1683, and it became a sensation, one of the books that taught Europe to imagine the middle of North America. Later editions grew taller in the telling, including a claim that he had paddled all the way down the Mississippi to the Gulf, which historians have doubted ever since. Whether the exaggerations were his or his editors, his reputation has carried that asterisk for 3 centuries. But his account of this lake country was real, and it earned his name a permanent place on the map. Hennepin County, Hennepin Avenue in Minneapolis, and this quiet park by the big lake all remember the Friar with the notebook. Out on the open shoreline, the walking turns elemental, water on one side, woods on the other, wind keeping time. Because Mille Lacs is so shallow and so broad, even a modest breeze puts a chop on it, and the sound of waves is nearly constant here. Gulls loaf on the offshore rocks and terns cut past like white scissors. 200 square miles of weather decide what kind of day this shore is having. Today it is a good one. The park itself dates to 1941, when the state set this corner of the lakeshore aside so ordinary families would always have public access to Mille Lacs. The timing was hard, with war coming, and for years there was almost no money to build anything. Real development waited until 1953, when Minnesota's new state park vehicle permit system finally funded roads, campgrounds, and facilities. Today the park offers about 100 drive and campsites in 2 campgrounds, Maple Grove back in the trees and Lakeview near the water, plus a large group camp. 80 years on, it is still doing exactly the job it was created for. The trail threads past the campground loops, where tents and campers sit under the hardwoods and wood smoke drifts through the shade. This is classic Minnesota summer, bikes leaning against picnic tables, towels drying on lines, someone always heading to or from the beach. The ranger station even lends out birding kits and volleyballs, and naturalist programs run in the busy season. It is an unhurried place. The lake sets the schedule, and the schedule is loose. Look offshore from this park, and you can see one of the strangest units in the entire National Wildlife Refuge system. 2 bare specks of rock out in the lake, Hennepin Island and Spirit Island, together make up the Mille Lacs National Wildlife Refuge. It was created on May 14, 1915, to protect nesting birds, and it totals just over half an acre, which makes it the smallest national wildlife refuge in the United States. An entire federal refuge, smaller than a suburban backyard. It is managed from afar, reachable only by boat, and visitors are asked to admire it from the water. Those islands punch far above their size, because they host one of only 4 breeding colonies of common terns in all of Minnesota, a species listed as threatened in the state. The terns share the rocks with ring-billed gulls, herring gulls, and double-crested cormorants, and space is tight. That is why boaters are discouraged from landing, because a single careless visit can wreck a nesting season. From Pope's Point, you can often watch the terns working the lake, slim white birds hovering, and then dropping like darts on small fish. A half-acre of rock is holding up a whole species foothold in this state. From the Overlook at Pope's Point, the geography of the day assembles itself. The beaches curve away to the east, the islands lie somewhere out in the shimmer, and the lake runs unbroken to the north until it simply ends in sky. It is the kind of view that recalibrates your sense of scale for Minnesota lakes. This is not a lake you look across, it is a lake you look out on, the way you look out on an ocean. Small park, enormous view. The park's neighbor is Isle, a town of about 800 people wrapped around a sheltered harbor on the lake's southeast bay. It was platted in 1906, incorporated in 1913, and it takes its name from the island lying just off its harbor. Isle calls itself the Little City on the Big Lake, and the slogan is accurate on both counts. It is a walleye town through and through, with resorts, launches, and bait shops serving the east side of the lake. Park and town sit shoulder to shoulder, and campers stroll into Isle for ice cream and supplies. The last legs of the loop swing back and forth between the two worlds of this park, bright lake edge and cool green interior. It is a rhythm you fall into, sun, shade, with the sound of the water rising and fading. July is peak season here, and yet the trails stay remarkably calm because most visitors gravitate to the beach and leave the woods to the walkers. Every bend either opens onto blue or closes into green. Both are worth the walk. Seven communities ring Mille Lacs, and the lake is the engine of all of them. In summer, that means launches heading out at dawn, resorts full of anglers and beaches full of families, a lake culture that has drawn Minnesotans north for generations. In winter, the lake performs its strangest trick, when ice fishing houses number in the thousands and whole temporary villages appear on the frozen surface, complete with plowed roads. Few lakes anywhere carry two such different seasons of life. The water never really closes, it just changes costume. The route home runs back along the sand, with the afternoon light stretching long across the water. Waves collapse and slide up the beach, erasing footprints behind you as fast as you make them. Out on the lake, boats are starting their slow runs back toward the harbor at Isle. The beach crowd thins, the Terns keep working, and the big lake starts arranging itself for evening. It is a hard place to walk quickly. For its size, this park carries a serious roster of wildlife. Bald eagles and ospreys fish the shoreline, and hawks and owls hunt the woods and edges. White-tailed deer are so common they are almost furniture, and the marshes and creeks support beaver, mink, and raccoon. Ruffed grouse thump their wings deep in the hardwoods in spring. Bring binoculars or borrow the birding kit from the ranger station, because the supporting cast here rarely takes a scene off. Most travelers only ever see Mille Lacs from a car window, rushing up the far shore on the highway, a blue blur on the way to somewhere else. The East End asks you to stop instead. Here the lake is something you walk beside slowly, a horizon that changes with every hour of light, guarded by a sand beach, a tern colony, and a town of 800. A shallow glacial bowl, 200 square miles of sky mirror, still doing what it has done since the ice left. Some places you visit to be amazed. This one, you visit to be becalmed. Father Hennepin State Park is the big lake distilled, one beach, one point, one loop of woods, and a name that carries a 300-year-old story. If your travels bring you up through central Minnesota, give the quiet corner of Mille an afternoon and bring sandals for the sand and binoculars for the terns. The walleye, the agates, and the horizon will all be here. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.